Welcome back. Today we're looking at my cheapest chips Barracuda Stratocaster. I'm just getting bored with it, and so I was thinking I might black out all the white. So painting the pick guard, the surrounds for the pickups, knobs, and we'll think about the nut as well. So that's where we're going today, off to the bench. So as is usual, the first thing we're going to do before we do any maintenance on this is check the setup. First thing we're going to do is check the action at the nut. So you put your cable on the 3rd fret and then you tap on the 1st fret. And if you can hear that little ticking noise, you're in good shape, because what we want is just about the thickness of a business card gap between the string and the 1st fret. So nut is good. Of course, we've done nut work on this. Next thing we check is the action at the 12th. And we are at just where I like it, which is about 1.75 millimeters at the 12th. It's low action, but that's where I like to play. So the setup is exactly where we want it, so there's no problem there. Now we're going to try and do this because these are brand new strings. We want to try and save them, so I'm going to strategically remove them so that we can get the pick guard and everything out without having to completely restring the guitar. So that's where we go next. So when you remove strings on a guitar, we're going to want to reuse these, so you loosen the skinny ones first, because the extra pressure on these big heavy ones will cause a lot more pressure on the skinny ones, and there's a chance that you could break them. We don't want that, so loosen skinny strings first. So now that we have the strings removed, start removing the pickguard screws. Now don't do these ones beside the pickups themselves yet, because they are attached to the pickguard. We will remove them afterwards. We're just going to remove all the pickguard screws only. We're probably going to look into painting the ends of the pickguard screws as well, but we'll get to that point when we get to that point. And of course, before you take off all the pick guard screws, you should probably have removed the buttons, because they would have been a lot easier to remove if the pick guard was still attached. Yeah, and keep a little container to put all your hardware in. Do this very carefully as well, as you don't want to mark up the knobs. And of course, this being a left-handed guitar, they've done the perfect thing and either put in left-handed pots or wired them backwards, which is something I've heard that they can do. They've changed the pots to work left-handed, but left right-handed knobs on it. Why, I have no idea. But, okay, so that is off. Now we can remove the pick guard carefully, because there are wires that go through the back to other places. You will notice this one has been shielded. I know that because, well, I shielded it. So we're not wanting to remove any of these wires. So what we're going to do is try and remove all the pickups and that without unhooking any of the wires, because we don't want to have to solder them back on. So the first thing we're going to do is get our Phillips and take apart let's take this off first, the selector switch. There are 2 screws on either end of it. These screws are larger than the pick guard screws, so we're going to keep them in a separate container. The screws for the pick-ups are longer than the screws for the selector switch. So we will keep them separate. The other thing is the 3 pots. Now, it would probably be clever for me to mark which one goes where now before I remove them. So I've strategically marked the volume, middle, and bottom tones, the top of the switch, and marked down that the top pickup has a red, a blue, and a white conductor on them. So now we know exactly where it all goes back together. That's important. Now the next thing we're going to do is remove the pickups. Now to remove the pickups, there's a screw on the front right beside here, Phillips as well. Now it goes through a spring and then into the pickup itself. So when you're taking that apart, you want to be very careful to not lose any of those parts. So I unscrew and put your finger on the spring itself so that it doesn't go shooting across the room. Because these are not only the mounts, but the height adjustment for your pickups. Bam. Drop the screwdriver, screw and spring, and then repeat it 6 times. It's also a good practice to take a picture of how everything is sitting before you take them off. That way you have something to go by when you're reinstalling. I actually also put a little mark down the side and across the bottom of the pick guard of each of the pots so that I know where they are pointed. And for this particular guitar, you're going to need a 12mm socket to loosen off the nuts around the pots. So we've now removed the pick guard. Next thing is the covers for the pots. Now there's a little slot in this here edge. You can take a straight blade screwdriver, gently just put it in a bit and give it a little twist. And off comes the cover. There are wires coming in on one side. I would recommend you stay away from those. On the other side, voila. Now we have all our pieces ready for painting. Now the other thing I noticed was there are washers under the nuts that hold on the potentiometers. Keep an eye out for them. Make sure that you get them as well. Now we are going to be painting these. What I have is some black paint that is paint primer cross, and it's what they call hammered black. So my guess is that it's going to have a little texture to it. So what I'm going to do is take some sandpaper 1200 and just sort of scruff up the edge, because this is a fairly smooth surface. If we scratch it up a bit, the paint will probably adhere better to it than if it's smooth. The paint could just chip off easily. And because we're doing all the hardware as well, we're going to get this here piece of cardboard and put all the screws poked through so that just the head sticks out carefully so that they're not loose and can blow away, because of course we're going to be doing this outside. And then all the hardware will have black finish on top as well. So we're not really sanding this as much as we're just sort of scuffing the surface. That's all we want to do. Just so that there's at least a little bit of texture to the finish. And then the paint will adhere better. And so here we are, all ready to go. Pickguard, pickup covers, knobs, any of the hardware, and the selector switch knob ready for painting, which you're not going to see because I'm going to have to do that outside, and it'll go by just like this. And so it is now a week later. I took all this stuff outside to paint it last week, and the paint I had bought had congealed and turned into basically spray foam insulation, and there was no way I could paint it. So I had to wait because it was the long weekend and nobody was open. And so I bought the paint on Monday. We redid everything now. Pickguard is black. The 3 pickup covers are black. The pickup mounting screws, the heads are black. The 3 knobs, volume and two-tone, black. Nut, selector switch knob and mounting screws, and all the pick guard screws are there. So today we are going to put it back together. It was a long week. Anyways, let's get to it. And so the easiest thing to install is going to be the nut. Always making sure you have the wide gaps at the end you need them at. And then I'm just going to install, because this is basically a pressure mount situation. It's just going to sit in there because the tension of the strings will hold it to the base. Not much to do there. Slide it in, move on to the next. And next we are going to install the pickup covers. These pickups are black to begin with, but the copper would show through if it came through, so I'm just going to slide them on. No, we're not. We're going to take a look at this and see why. Why? So the other 2 pick up covers went on fine, but this particular one seems to have a specific one that fits it. Why? I don't know. Maybe the holes are just a little bit different, but you just slide it on, make sure you get good solid contact to the base. Voila! Now, next thing we're going to do is attach them to the pick guard. Now these springs and longer screws are what do it. You want to put the screw down through the top, and it threads into the bottom of the pickup, not the cover. It will slide through the cover but mount to the pickup. But you want to put the screw in first here, then you put the spring on the screw, because the spring has to go between the pickup and the pickup cover. So that slides through there. And it's a little tricky to do it first, but once you get the first screw started, pause. So it is a little tricky and impossible for you to see when I painted everything black, but the screw goes down through, then the spring goes around the screw, and then the screw into the mounting of the pickup. And at that point, you can, as you tighten this screw up, the pickup will raise out through the mounting hole that it is attached to. And that's what will adjust the height of the pickup. As I say, next to impossible to see in black on this camera. Maybe I should try and mess with the lighting. Now please excuse the graininess, but it's the only way I could adjust the camera so that you could see roughly what's going on here. We have the screw come down through the top. It goes through the spring and then into the base of the pickup. As you tighten that, the pickups will rise and lower so that you can get the proper height adjustment. Now, I also did chip a little bit of the paint off some of the screws with the screwdriver. That we can fix up in editing. So the next item is going to be the selector switch. Or better yet, let's do the pickups because I said so. Flip these over. Move the camera and adjust the coloring, since now we'll be working a little bit showing the white part. So I'm going to remove the nut and the washer, put the knob down through, aligning the line that I put on the side of the pot and the pick guard a little bit, but we'll be able to adjust that more once we get the nut on and just not tighten it down. What makes this even more difficult is the fact that there's short wires going from all this into the body of the guitar. So what I found was putting the 3 pots in and having them all set up and ready first off is the way to go. But magnets are wonderful things. When you're going to put the washer on, rub the washer. You're going to notice that one side has a little bit of an edge where it was punched, because it's always punched from the same side. So you want to get the part with the sharper edge down. That is going to dig in deeper to the pick guard. So now get the nut started. You want to be careful with this. You don't want to cross thread these, because that would be a bad thing. Now pushing up from the bottom, checking the washer for the sharper edge. That goes down, nut goes on carefully. And we're not going to tighten them right down yet because we want to be able to adjust them once we get them all in place. Washer and nut. Aha, that's why. It was not fully in the hole. Then we're going to put the selector switch up through and just leave it there. Now we're going to carefully flip everything over so we have access to the back. We will take the 2 screws for the selector switch and flip everything back again and get them just started. Now we're just going to sink them. We are not going to tighten them. We just want it to hold the selector switch in place. We go around afterwards and tighten everything. Now what we're going to do is line up the little magic marker lines that we put on the pots. And then tighten the nut. Remembering that it's now everything is upside down. So I'm twisting in the loosening direction. Now we can flip that over. And remember, we needed a 12 mil socket for these here. Gonna get them snug, then look again to see the alignment. This might not matter that much, but because once we put the knobs on, we're going to orientate them. Then we're going to go find that socket. And I had to pause it there so that I didn't have to rate this video R. Now we're going to tighten down the selector switch. You don't want to really reef on these, but you do want to make sure that they are snug. And with that, it is time to check all the pickguard screws, but the first thing we want to do is make sure that none of the wires are getting between the body and the pickguard. You want to make sure that the pickguard sits flat against the surface of the guitar. That way you are assured you have no wires being pinched. I'm going to get all the pick guard screws in now. We probably, before we do all this, let's test these pickups to make sure that they work. And how we test this is we've plugged it in. It is plugged into the amplifier. We're going to move the selector switch into the bridge or the neck only pickup. And then once we turn it on, we're going to tap the magnets, and we should be able to hear it like so. But we should not hear these ones because it is in the neck pickup only. When it's straight up or in the middle position, that should be pickup in the middle pickup only. Then once we get down to the very bottom, none. Second from the bottom should be these two, and the one from the second from the top should be. So now we know that the pickups are actually working. Next thing we're going to do is measure the, and for that we want our ohm meter. We're going to set it to ohms, and then we're going to take, with it still plugged in, the other back to the shaft, and the red to the head, putting it in the bridge cup, making sure that it is cranked wide, which I think is that way. Neck pickup gives us about a 667 in that general. Now to the center, middle pickup, aft, red to the head. D5, and then the, yes, we double read all three. By the way, when 2 is going to go, because it should be like going half and half. So those are all acceptable readings. So now we're going to continue with installing the pickup screws. Always starting them by hand so that you know you don't cross thread or strip them. You should be able to feel them at least start to go into the threads that are already there. Once again, this being a left-handed guitar, the people who made it thought enough to either put in left-handed pots or wired them backwards, which is, I heard, something that they can do, and that's going to deplete your output, the performance, but it's a lot easier than buying the other ones. And then they left us right-handed knobs, which why I'm not too concerned with painting over the numbers. Who looks at the numbers anyways? You crank it down, then you turn it up. Okay, now we're going to reinstall the selector switch knob, and it's secure enough. Now for this, what I do is turn all the buttons, well, being left-handed, cranking them wide open. If you're right-handed, then you crank them closed. And then you look at which angle you're going to be looking at it. And then I get the volume wording so that the bottom points up here and I can read it just by looking down. And install. Next is the tone button. Lining up the wording. And install. Second tone. Now, if you find that the knobs come off easily, there's a slot inside this fits over the shaft. There's a slot in it. Put a screwdriver in it and widen them out. That's all you really need to know there. So now we're going to go around. First off, just sink all the pickguard screws. Don't tighten them yet. Because once you get them all tightened, then we're going to go around and look for gaps between the cover and the body. That's going to verify that we have not squeezed any wires between the pickguard and the body. And use a proper sized Phillips so that you don't end up stripping the heads. That other one was downsized. Now I left the bridge, the output jack, and the tuner heads all chromed. If I decide later I want to change that, I will, but at this point I just wanted to black out the controls. And we are good. There's no gap anywhere between the body and the pickguard, so we're going to just go around again and snug them up in a crisscross pattern. I'm just making them snug. Because these are easily stripped, they're very small screws. Then I will go around in order just to make sure I didn't miss one. If you find any are stripped, take the screw out, chop off a little end of a toothpick, put it down in the hole, and then reinstall the screw. That's the red-green way of fixing it. Now I'm going to make sure that those are mounted properly. And then we're going to restring it, and we will set up the height of the pickups, because that will be the last thing that needs to be done. So we're also going to do a bit of a rework. The screw heads did not take. So I'm going to take each one of them out and scrape what's left of the paint off, just because it's going to look better that way than letting them come off all by themselves. So there's my next little job. And so there are the end results. Took the paint off of the screws. The only thing left now is the fingerprints. And there we have one blacked out Stratocaster. I think it looks better with the bare screws anyways, which is okay. But there we go. The only thing I forgot to do was the back plate, which I'm gonna go down and paint right now. The only other thing I really wanted to do to this is the back of the neck is kind of a gloss finish. I don't like that, so I'm going to be going over it with some 1200 sandpaper and see if I can just sort of make it a little more matte. I might not be selling this thing. I might. I don't know. We'll see. But there's a scrape in the finish right there on the neck, so sanding it down might be the way to go. All right. With that, thanks for watching. Please share, like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Tell me what I did right, what I did wrong. I know what I did wrong here. I painted the screws, and the black, I like it, but I think if I got a black pick guard, an actual black pick guard that had the 3 layers and had that white stripe, or I could just paint or remove the paint from the beveled edge. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Thanks for watching. Share, like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Blah, 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 blah. Not a luthier. Just an old guy with too much time on my hands. And sorry about the bad editing of this video, but for some reason YouTube has decided I shouldn't be able to edit my videos anymore. They just chew the video. The audio stays the same, but the video goes all blurry, and not blurry, but pixely. So I'm going to have to figure out how to fix that. Maybe it's time to upgrade my recording materials. So thanks again.